which the majority leader comes, we have attempted to work out. There are several things that I think we will get worked out today, but I think a more general discussion about what just went on here, that the American people need to know. All these bills could have come to the floor for debate and amendment. They haven't been blocked. What has happened is one senator, myself, to the dismay of most of my colleagues on my side of the aisle who want these bills to pass, I've said the American people ought to hear a debate. And we ought to be able to amend the bills. We're talking about $10 billion in new spending, 37 new government agencies, and we're to pass that by not having any debate and just saying yes. Well, I won't do that. And I understand that's frustrating to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Matter of fact, I get much more consternation from the Republicans than I do for the Democrats for my desire for us to be frugal with American taxpayer dollars and also to be transparent. The fact is we ought to have debates and we ought to amend it. And if you watch C-SPAN at all, what you see is the vast majority of the time we're not doing anything in here. And so there is plenty of time for us to do it. I'd make another significant point. We have in front of us a financial crisis that we're going to ask the American taxpayer to fund some $700 billion in guarantees on loans for one way or the other, for loans that are not performing, whether that be mortgages or other loans, commercial real estate, home real estate. We're getting ready to ask the American people to do that. And the contention that I've had in this body since I've been here is completely opposite of what Senator Reid voiced yesterday and then again this morning, is that these don't cost anything. Well, if they really don't cost anything and we're not going to spend any money, then they're not ever going to have any impact if we don't spend the money. And the fact is authorizations matter because we do intend to spend the money. And therefore, if we continue to authorize and grow the government bigger than what it is today, and one of the reasons we're in the jam today is because the federal government is trying to do things totally outside the enumerated powers of the Constitution that were specifically given to us to limit the range and impact and reach of the federal government. That's why we're going to be asking $700 billion of the next generation's money to make up for mistakes that Congresses have made as we've reached beyond what the Constitution says. The very idea to claim that these don't spend any money falls in the face of the reality. And I would like to submit to the record a release on military aid spending because it shows the duplicity associated with our words. Now, the majority leader just said none of this spends any money. Well, we just passed the defense authorization bill, and lo and behold, what are the releases of all the members of Congress that had marks and things that go home to parochial interest? Here's what they say. They'll spend money. Major research and military infrastructure needs will receive an enormous boost. Nearly $200 million in federal spending to ensure the state's bases have everything they need. Well, if authorizations don't spend any money, why are we claiming in press releases that they do? We can't have it both ways. And the fact is if we say they don't spend any money and we don't intend to appropriate it, what we're doing is playing a hoax on the American people. We're going to have before us this week some very difficult challenges for the Congress. The medicine, the painful medicine that this country is going to have to take to reestablish confidence in our financial markets is directly related to the behavior of not deauthorizing and not getting rid of wasteful programs. The fact is the Government Accounting Office has specifically listed out, along with the Inspector Generals of each of the agencies, as well as the Congressional Budget Office and Congressional Research Service, over $300 billion of waste or fraud or duplication. When was the last time We aggressively eliminated waste. We aggressively eliminated fraud, aggressively eliminated duplication. The president has admitted, combining the debt we're borrowing from Social Security, that this next year we're going to have a $600 billion deficit. So not only are we going to take $700 billion and put it into non-performing loans, we're going to borrow another $600 billion from the next generation just to operate the government when we know over $300 billion of that's waste. What are we doing? We're passing more authorizations with new spending, which will get spent, or we're being dishonest with those people who say we're supporting those programs. It is time for a change. Both campaigns on the presidential side are talking about that. But the change that needs to happen is a change inside Congress, that we will start addressing the real problem. I mean, imagine the fact that the HHS put out that in 2007, 31% of all Medicare payments were improperly made, with about 80% of those being overpayments. Doesn't sound like much until you see that that's almost $80 billion of Medicare dollars that were improperly paid. Where's the bill on the floor now to fix that? Where's the bill on the floor to get us out of the energy jam that we're in? Instead, we're authorizing new programs without eliminating others and continuing the very errors of our ways that got us into the jam that we're now going to ask the American taxpayers to give us $700 billion to get us out of. It's time for a timeout in Washington. It's time for us to reconsider how we do things, why we do things, and when we do things. Passing large numbers of new authorizations without eliminating the areas that aren't working now don't fix anything. All they do is make it more expensive to continue to fail. It also means that we don't hold the bureaucracies accountable, which we're not. I'd ask the President the amount of time that I have left.
6 minutes and 41 seconds.
Thank you. I'll finish up here in just a moment. The question the American people ought to be asking of Congress right now, I believe, is this. You took an oath to uphold the Constitution. The Constitution has in it this very significant component. It's called the Enumerated Powers Act. It's Article 2, Section 8. It tells us exactly what we're to be about, what we're to do, and what we're not to do. The question you ought to measure us on is, are we following the U.S. Constitution? Many of the bills that Senator Reid just brought forward are well within the bounds of the enumerated powers. But many of them aren't. And yet we think at a parochial level and a political level about our own re-elections, and we forget this document that has guided this country so well. My hope is that the American people will start demanding that we follow this rule book, this guidebook. And if we do, not only will we eliminate that $300 billion worth of waste, fraud, and abuse, we'll eliminate another $300 billion worth of programs that don't have any role coming out of the federal government. And we'll put government closer and more directly accountable to the very people who are being governed. And that's back at the local and state level. I would just say, in finishing up, Senator Reid made several references to the Republican caucus. I will assure him that the vast majority of the members of my caucus don't support my position on authorizations. And their only support of me came in light of contrasting it next to an energy bill, which we've still not accomplished. Congress has still not done anything about the #1 national security issue facing us, which is our dependence on foreign sources of energy. That's what we ought to be about this week. We ought to pass a CR. We ought to do what we have to do to fix the financial crisis. And we ought to be back making sure that another year doesn't go by where we don't have a comprehensive plan that utilizes every bit of Americans' talent every bit of America's resources to make us less dependent and less secure on the issue of energy. And with that, I would yield back the balance of my time. To unanimous consent for this to be part of the record.
Without objection, so ordered.